Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining us here this morning. Sorry we're a couple minutes late, we had some technical difficulties. My name is Sarah Thrall, and I'm the General and Personnel Manager for the Lexington Philharmonic. This is the fourth and final installment of our Connect Coffee Hour series, and we've enjoyed these conversations so much. Today's Connect Coffee Hour is hosted by LexPhil Interim Artistic Advisor Kelly Corcoran. Kelly joined LexPhil in this position in January, and we are thrilled to have her here at LexPhil. She is also the artistic director and conductor of Intersection, a contemporary ensemble in Nashville, Tennessee. Previously, she served 9 seasons as associate conductor of Nashville Symphony and director of Nashville Symphony Chorus. Kelly is also pursuing a master's in public health and health behavior from the University of Alabama, Birmingham. We have so many amazing guests here with us today to explore how music and arts support students' learning. From Kids Make It, we have Jariah Gordon and David Laurenville, who are co-directors of Kids Make It and STEM teachers. We have Andrea Markham here, who is a recently retired music teacher at Arlington Elementary and longtime friend of LexPhil's. And from Living Arts and Science Center, we have Executive Director Lori Halligan and STEM Discovery Educator and Planetarium Coordinator Amanda Wheeler. Just a couple housekeeping announcements before we get started. For everyone watching, we'd love to hear from you this morning. The conversation will include some opportunities to share your thoughts or experiences. There will also be a poll for attendees on Zoom, and for those watching on Facebook, we hope you will participate in the comments, as we'll also be watching and engaging with our audience there. If you need it, you can enable closed captions at the bottom of your screen. There should be an icon that says live transcriptions. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with all of these wonderful guests. And so these coffee hours are an opportunity to connect with each other and highlight the work of our community members and LexPhil, and engage in some conversations around topics of relevance and value for our community. So we hope to have a casual, meaningful conversation this morning and share some information with you and make space to listen to each other. So we're going to do some Q&As with our panelists, and we really do invite you to submit questions as well. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, you can put them into the chat at any time. And we'll also be sharing some resources along the way as well. And we do have a prompt that we would love your feedback on as well to get the conversation flowing. So today we're going to be exploring the concept of STEAM, where the arts are integrated into science, technology, engineering, and math. Here at LexPhil, we create a range of educational programs working with partners, and our educational programming this season is directly connecting music and STEM, resulting in STEAM. This is not a new concept, as science and art have been deeply connected for much of history. Take, for example, Leonardo da Vinci. And today we're going to hear from Andrea, a veteran music teacher, plus Jariah, David, Lori, and Amanda, who are all doing incredible work in this arena with Kids Make It and the Living Arts and Science Center. We'll explore how music is innately connected to science and how arts integration can support all of this work. We'll hear a performance by some LexPhil musicians and preview some of the concepts that LexPhil is working on, connecting music and science. So since we have Kids Make It and the Living Arts and Science Center here, I want to start by sharing the mission of both of these organizations. Kids Make It, their mission is to inspire and capture the career and business ambitions of Lexington's North End youth while providing them with STEAM opportunities to explore their creativity. Kids Make It is a 21st century community learning center that enables children to explore the boundaries of innovation and imagine the possibilities through dreaming, designing, engineering, and making. Kids are challenged to create new inventive designs while also considering principles of business, such as rapid prototyping, marketing, shipping, and profit. And we'll be sharing the links to these organizations so you can learn more. The Living Arts and Science Center inspires participation in art and science by engaging the community through education, discovery, exploration, and creativity. The mission is accomplished through hands-on and interactive instruction in arts and science, directly from professional educators and active artists and scientists. Activities include collaborative experiences for the community, educational programs in schools, community centers, and other venues, as well as free programming for all members of the Central Kentucky community. So before we dive into this huge topic, we want to hear from you. We're going to do a quick poll to hear what you think. And we want to know, how familiar are you with the concept of STEAM and how it relates to education? So Jariah, what is the difference between STEM and STEAM, and why does this matter?
Apologies. So STEM is a field that isn't new as far as it relates to STEAM. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And STEAM adds an art component, which is what the A stands for. And although STEM as a colloquial term is far older than STEAM, we understand that the underpinnings or the foundations of intellectual development is based upon art appreciation. So when we think about how STEAM shows up in the real world, we're thinking about artists, we're thinking about musicians, we're thinking about curators, and we're also thinking about scientists and innovators. And so STEAM pulls science and art together in what I feel is a more natural way in which science, technology, engineering, art, and math show up in the world. And so those things start with people, and those things start with experiences. So when we think about STEAM, we're thinking about, as young as a 2-year-old, understanding, what a physical object is by observing it, and understanding that observation is one of the key concepts of scientific, the scientific method and scientific discovery in general. So I feel like STEAM is just an advance on what STEM already does, whereas STEM is the application. STEM is how we see that show up in the world in very concrete terms as far as professions and careers. But STEAM is a more expansive ideological principle where we are teaching them STEM through the lens of artistic observation and creation.
I love that. And I love how, this is something that is very natural and very, it just kind of works. And so, yeah, that brings me to you, Amanda. The Living Arts and Science Center has art and science in the name. So how do you view the relationship between art and science?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love what she was saying about, the observations, and we believe that science and art, they're deeply connected. You can observe art, you can observe science. Some of my favorite pieces of art are actually photos of space or photos of nature. You can really appreciate the beauty as well as kind of do a deep dive into the science behind it. So one example is nebulas. They are beautiful. If you look at pictures of nebula, they are stunning. But you can also learn about how, those are clouds of dust and gas and outer space and all the different things going on in there. So they are just deeply connected. We're really lucky to live in the bluegrass because we have lots of natural beauty around us, and lots of biodiversity. So you can actually kind of, go look for turtles and frogs and salamanders and then take a notebook and sketch or take photos. So we're really lucky, and I feel like they are deeply connected to one another. There's also lots of really cool science projects that you can do that turn into beautiful pieces of art. So they go hand in hand.
I love that too. That's great. So Andrea, from your perspective as a veteran music teacher, are you thinking about STEM concepts when you're teaching music in the classroom to elementary students? And is it important to integrate other focus areas into music teaching? And then why or why not, based upon what you think?
Well, especially as time has progressed, it's become much more much more important to integrate STEM into music. And it's already heavily embedded in music. You've got, just as a general discussion, science, you're talking about acoustics, timbre, sound production, instrument design. With technology, you're talking about the development of instruments, digital composition programs. With engineering, the form and structure of music. And with mathematics, all of music, the entire area of music theory is based on the relationship, the mathematical relationship of one sound to another. So music couldn't possibly be more STEM than it already is. It couldn't possibly be. And in terms of integrating other focus areas, it's incredibly important because humans don't live their lives in a compartmentalized way. We don't say, okay, it's time to use my math skills, or it's time to use my music skills. We as adults learn to integrate them, and our students will be much more successful if we guide them through experiences that allow them to integrate science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the arts together.
Thank you all for framing this conversation so well and kind of launching into this topic. So, Jiraiya, I want to come back to you because I know you think a lot about how innovation, the engineering process, and scientific creative design informs STEAM education. So can you talk about the role of creativity in science, technology, engineering, and math? Like, why is creativity a crucial part of STEM?
So I will just mirror what Andrea said, in that you cannot think of art without the underpinnings of, science, technology, engineering, and math. And you can't think about science, technology, engineering, and math without, the underpinnings of art. And so when we talk to our kids about creative design, creative art and design, so let's say, we're having a conversation with them about a product that they want to create, right? And the way that they interact with that is watching social influencers on Instagram and Facebook, market products. We have to teach them that in order to become that social influencer, you have to be just as intentional with, what you're creating behind the scenes as what you're promoting once you're in front of people. And so when we're thinking about creative art and design and how that influences, these careers or these passions that they want to pursue in the real world, we're teaching them that, you have to be intentional with what you're creating. And so, when you're thinking about how that relates to science, technology, engineering, and math, all of those fields inform what you're creating. So, if you sit down and you're going to use a particular like program to create something, how are you going to design that product that you're going to market? And once you design that product, how's that product going to be implemented in a way that's useful to other people? So we're always bringing, these very abstract ideas that we come up with, things that they want to pursue, things that they've seen, and we show them the science behind it. We show them how to create that, and that's important because you could teach them about ideology all day, but how do you apply it, and how do you design it in such a way or organize yourself in such a way to be successful from the start and be most efficient.
Yeah, I love the way you're kind of applying it to real world applications, for these kids. And so a lot of our discussion today is going to be focused on youth, but Amanda, I don't want to leave behind other parts of our community that are at different stages of their life. And I know that one of your values at the Living Arts and Science Center is lifelong learning. So I'd love to hear from you on the application of STEAM and creative learning for all ages, including the adults listening today. And then we're probably going to pivot back to kids and in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do a lot with kids, but we also do a lot with adults. We believe that lifelong learning is very important. I know that I love to learn new things. And we believe that, learning isn't just in the classroom. It happens all the time, every day. So we actually have really cool programs that we offer for adults. And so we do planetary science in our planetarium, stargazing, things like that. We offer cooking classes. We have a pottery studio, so we do clay classes. And we also do crafts on tap, where adults are able to socialize and learn new crafts. So we have things that are specifically for the adults. And then we also have family learning opportunities, family programs. And those are really cool because you can see the kids and adults learning together. And then often you'll see the kids kind of taking on an educational role and explaining things to their parents, especially with like our after school kids. And they get to bring their parents in and tell them, explain to them all the different science and technology and engineering and art and math that they have learned. And then the kids get to take on that educational role for the parents. And that's really fun to see too. So yeah, we absolutely believe in lifelong learning. Learning happens all the time, not just in a classroom. And we really strive to be an education facility for everybody.
So STEAM is something we can all connect with. And with that in mind, Sarah, I'm wondering if we got some responses in. So, okay, great. So many of us, 67%, are extremely familiar with the concept of STEAM, but there's some of us that were not as familiar and, moderately familiar. So this is a new concept for some people. And so I'm really glad we're here to talk about this and explore this. Andrea, I want to come back to you and now into the classroom with students. And you spent the majority of your career working with elementary students. So take us into the classroom. What are the musical concepts that you want elementary students to master?
Well, the first thing is I really want them to develop or maintain, if they already have it, a curiosity for and a love for music. Because if we haven't developed those qualities in them, we're not going to get them any further in learning about music or experiencing it. Students should also feel comfortable improvising in music, whether it's improvising using their body and doing dance or using an instrument and improvising, because that helps them understand how music is created and constructed. Students should also be able to master basic music elements, at least at the elementary level, music vocabulary, especially the elements of music, because we want them to have intelligent conversations about music. So when someone says, well, what did you like about that song? I don't know, I just liked it. That's extremely vague. Whereas if someone said, what did you like about that? Oh, I loved the tempo. The tempo was really fast, and I really loved how the dynamics kept changing from loud to soft. And when we give them that vocabulary and give them ways to describe music more specifically, then they'll start to express opinions about music. And that's a very key aspect to that. They also should understand forms and structures in music. And that goes back to the improvisational aspect. In class, we would analyze music that had been recorded by others, but then we would take the form or the structure of that music and create a piece in that same form. And the purpose of that was to kind of slowly peel away the mystery of how a piece is composed and let them see that we are all composers and that there's an interrelationship between everything, and to let them see that they can do whatever they want if they're willing to devote the time and the energy.
I love that even with elementary students, we can get into some really deep thinking and deep discussions about music. And I know Lori and David, we're going to bring you in pretty soon to the conversation. So thanks for listening and hanging out. So you know, as we've already talked about, so much of music already connects to scientific concepts when we're talking about pitch or vibration, acoustics, instrument design. In all of these things, engineering and scientific principles are present. So in a bit, we'll watch a fun video performance by our percussion section. But first, we're going to watch a short video by our LexPhil principal percussionist, Jim Campbell, where he's going to talk about the intricacies of playing the triangle. And you'll hear him mention different angles of playing and vibrations and more, which all gets me thinking about the concepts we've already been discussing with STEAM.
It's important to know that the triangle has two modes of vibration. There's a swing mode, so when I strike the triangle, it's moving this way, opposite of the direction of my strike. And it's also, because of its suspension, has a little bit of a twist mode. So that swing mode and that twist mode. Now you can change the color of the triangle depending on where and how you strike it to give one or more of those modes maybe more importance. For instance, if I want to get a lot of overtones, I want a rich, vibrant sound from the triangle. Let's say I'm playing this section with the brass and I want to blend in with those brass. I'm going to play where I do the strike on the side, add an angle to the triangle, not perpendicular, but at an angle, so that I can get a twist and I can get some forward motion. Falling into the triangle, I get this kind of sound. I can also get that sort of tone, a darker tone, by playing on the bottom, again, striking at an angle. Compare that. So right away you see on the bottom at an angle is a lot darker. Darker overtones are really brought out. Now, if I just use my striking on the side and I play with that swing motion in mind, that swing, I get this. It's a lot clearer tone, isn't it? Not as much complex vibrations. So from the same instrument, depending on the angle and the place you strike, you can get a lot of different complex overtones that create a special tone color. And that tone color can be used in for the piece of music you're playing. For instance, if I need clarity, I have a fast rhythmic part, I might play up here straight into a perpendicular motion with the triangle. Because it's a fast rhythmic part, there's a lot more clarity than I would get down here. It just rings so much and it's so dark, it's really hard for the clarity of the passage to come out. So that's true that way. If I want to play rhythmically or roll faster parts, well, you can use the same strategy. So playing in the corner at striking opposite sides with a quick up and down motion gives me clarity and rhythm.
I just love all the nuances of playing, even the triangle. And I encourage you to watch the rest of that video. It's on the LexPhil website, and you can hear a little bit more about the intricacy of playing the instrument. And so I want to invite our audience as well to put in the chat or make any comments about like how you view the relationship between science and music. We'd love to hear from you and encourage you to let us know what you're thinking about all of this. So David, let's turn back to the work of Kids Make It. This is a relatively new organization started in 2020. Tell us about how Kids Make It started and some of the work that you are doing in the community.
Oh, certainly. Well, Kids Make It has definitely been a work in progress since 2015, where we kind of formalized an idea of how we engage youth in the North End. But it wasn't until, I would say, coronavirus hit, when everyone was inside and the students were out of school, that we decided to go ahead and really implement some of the ideas that we had in mind. And really the goal of it was to lower the barrier of entry for youth into science and technology. So it's interesting that we kind of like explored the side of art, which I feel is kind of experiencing and creating. And science is, in a way, questioning and solving. So really, we even have kids who ask, well, what's math and what's science? And we always break it down in this way. We always tell them that science is a tool used in order to ask questions. And we tell them that engineering is the process used in order to solve or answer those questions. So Kids Make It really is an initiative whose goal is to expose youth as much as possible to the engineering and scientific methods. And two of the ways that we do that is by lowering the barrier of entries to minorities within the North End. And the second way that we do that is to use art and technology in order to inspire them. We present them with robots, with gadgets, with technology that really captures their mind, but we put it in front of them and allow them to explore it themselves. And by the end of the process, the goal is for them to be able to make something with what they're experiencing. So.
Yeah, and I love that even this concept of making something is in your title, right? Like it's in your whole mission of everything you do, right? Getting kids doing the work. That's wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Lori, let's talk about the Living Arts and Science Center, because you've been serving Kentucky for over 50 years. So how have your priorities and programming changed and evolved over time?
Well, that's really interesting because in many ways, the overall mission hasn't changed at all. I mean, we've always had the words art and science in our name. And I kind of think we were STEAM before anyone ever even thought of that acronym. So we certainly have grown and we've adapted to a changing world around us. And I would say particularly in the area of technology, because 53 years ago, what was technology? Think about how fast the world has changed in that manner. So obviously we didn't have digital photography, but we had, single lens or SLR photography and developing your own film and things like that. We didn't have a computer 53 years ago, and just think about how the opportunities for digital manipulation or green screen technology and editing your own videos and things like that. And then before we had the Farish Planetarium, the only planetarium here in the city of Lexington, we had our mobile star lab. So if someone couldn't come to the Living Arts and Science Center, we could take it to them. So we have our Wonder on Wheels program that can go out to really anywhere in central eastern Kentucky. So I would just say the program content and the delivery model has certainly adapted as STEAM has changed, but our priorities have always been focused on the integration of arts and science.
Yeah, I appreciate you framing it that way, that, these values are the same, but the way in which we engage in the work obviously is changing all the time, given the changing dynamics of our community. And so Andrea, you have been in the classroom for many years and thinking about the changing needs of our community today. You have these decades of experience as a music educator. How have you seen the needs of children change over time? And how is music positioned to serve the needs of our youth?
Well, we know that technology has made music much more accessible to our students than in the past, because even very young students now have their own phone which they can download their own music. And so, as I mentioned earlier, they're starting to develop opinions about things, and they develop opinions about music much earlier now than they used to. And so finding ways to get them interested in music that their family doesn't listen to can sometimes be a challenge. But digitally, when we share things, that allows them, like I can post something on Google Classroom and say, just listen to this, listen to 1 minute of this, and get them to open up their world, excuse me, in terms of what music is, because they use it to communicate. I think our students now more than ever need an outlet to voice questions about what they see and hear in the media without getting too deeply into that, because, you know, all of us can relate to listening to music as an adolescent or a teen and really connecting with certain songs or certain composers. And so our children need to have access to music that expresses positive sentiments and helps build them up. Music is a great denominator in culture. All cultures have ways for using music for enjoyment, for friendship, for worship, many other things. And given our social climate, I think our students need to focus on our similarities and how we all share music. And that's one of the primary ways that music can serve, because again, it's one of those things that's common to all cultures.
Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to hear some music in just a second. And LexPhil has a history of creating educational programs and working with partner schools and aiming to bring our values of artistic excellence, innovation, collaboration, and accessibility into our educational work. So we're currently developing several programs connecting music and STEAM together. So we have a program with string players exploring fractions that we're developing, a program with wind players exploring engineering design, a brass program engaging in scientific inquiry, and a percussion program looking at earth science and the concepts of reduce, reuse, and recycle. So these are all programs that we're developing that we'll be sharing with the community in the coming months. And we'd love to share with you a performance by our LexPhil Percussionists of Life on Mars. This is an original work composed by them, inspired by Holst's The Planets, and it's using materials like buckets and pots and pans and more to demonstrate how many of the materials we have around us every day can be used as percussion instruments. So enjoy the performance. Bravo to our players. I want to say thank you to all of them for making that video and sharing that work with us. So much fun. I want to be a percussionist. So I would love to hear from all of you too that are watching and listening. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear your response to the piece you just heard, and you can always put any questions or comments in the chat. So Andrea, I want to come back to you. In 2014, you were named Elementary School Teacher of the Year by the Kentucky Music Educators Association, and for many years served as teacher leader for UK's cadre of the Kentucky Reading Project, helping classroom teachers learn to integrate music into literacy instruction. So tell us about the process and challenges of integrating music with other subjects in the classroom, and also how the standards integrate into that work. So basically, like, in other words, how do we make these interdisciplinary connections strong, where they make sense and they work?
The first part of making these connections is to convince other people that they're important. And sometimes we run into educators that have blinders that say, this is my area, or I only teach this. And that makes it, very difficult. But rich collaboration with others, because as many people as you can bring into it is going to make it much better. Time is the challenge, finding the time to do it, the time to prepare. And myself, I wasn't always one of the people that was on board with all the integration. I ended up participating in the Kentucky Reading Project, which helps teachers develop strategies and activities for struggling readers. And I participated as the music teacher out of curiosity. And during that year that I participated, I sort of had an epiphany. Regardless of how well my students could sing, play an instrument, or read music, if they could not read proficiently, they were not going to be very successful in life. And so I said, if that's the way the world works, I need to become bigger than just the music teacher. I need to be an educator that focuses on music. And so I started trying to pull all of these other areas into teaching. One of the things that I would do is collaborate with the classroom teacher who would say, you know what? We have a standard where in first grade where kids are supposed to identify rhyming, and my class is really not getting it. So the class would come into the room and we would write a song that had rhyming in it. And we would either make our own melody or choose a melody from somewhere else. With some of the upper level grades, it tended to be more science and mathematics ways to do things, steps and procedures on how to do things. And so making sure that the children understood that we could use music to learn science. We can learn music to learn mathematics. We can learn music to do anything. And so by teaching them that, going back to that not compartmentalizing children again, we kind of broaden their idea of what learning is, and that it's not just it's time for math, it's time for reading, it's just time for learning. I also, with my affiliation with LexPhil, was blessed to have two wonderful musicians who came and did a great job of providing interdisciplinary connections. And that was Clyde Beavers and Rebecca Keekenap. They came and would perform for the kids and talk about things and talk about how the sounds of their cello could imitate sounds that they would hear in the environment. And why does this instrument do this? How can it do this? And really getting into the science of it. And so it was always a wonderful experience for the children. So trying to find time to collaborate and adopting an idea that we need to teach children as a whole, not as sections, makes interdisciplinary connections much more easy.
Thank you. And I appreciate you naming that, like, you even had a personal journey as a teacher where you had to kind of realize that and integrate that into your teaching, and the investment of time that's necessary to engage in this work too. But that the reward is kind of worth that investment and the impact that it makes. So we're going to come back to STEAM and music education in a moment and specific outcomes for our youth. But first, I want to talk about gender and racial equity in STEM professions. women make up only 28% of the workforce in science, technology, engineering, and math, and men vastly outnumber women majoring in most STEM fields in college. So when I hear this statistic, it makes me think about some of the statistics surrounding female conductors as a female conductor. So of the 537 music directors with US orchestras, only 60 are women. And of the 24 highest budget orchestras, only one features a woman at the helm. And that is Marin Alsep, who was a mentor of mine, or is a mentor of mine. Additionally, according to the Pew Research Center, Blacks and Hispanics are underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, and math jobs relative to their presence in the overall US workforce, particularly among workers with a bachelor's degree or higher. So I know you are all doing important work to address these issues. And David, I'd love to start with you. So tell us about the work that you're doing to uplift and empower our future leaders who have been historically excluded from STEAM fields.
Yeah, it's what you bring up is such a deep mechanism within our society. But I would say that we would have to start from the evolution of education and the change of it, as many have already mentioned. From the national law perspective, we shifted into the 21st century learning style, where we went from the Bush's administration's No Child Left Behind to the Obama's administration, Every Student Succeeds. So with that, we're kind of shifting away from testing the students to testing the actual programs that the students are engaged in. So one of the things that we do, or that we see, where we see ourselves, is as a resource to schools, to teachers, and to parents. And we kind of see ourselves as facilitators to education. So in that sense, we allow the students to kind of teach themselves, which they're already doing, right? They're utilizing technology, social media, YouTube, TikTok, all these things out here, and they're getting all this information in already. So they're learning at a quicker rate or a quicker pace than we have in the past. So the way that we see, or how we see that we engage the youth, is by presenting them with constructive material that they could then absorb on their own and learn from their own perspective. You mentioned the stats and the statistics about minorities and women not necessarily having access to these specific fields. One of the most important things for us to do here is to expose minorities to coding, for example. It's something that's going to become like a second language, like writing. Every student, we feel, needs to learn how to code. So in our program, we're teaching kids, logic-based coding. We're also teaching them how to use that code in order to program specific circuit boards. There's just so much that's entailed in the disparities and in bringing access to STEAM education to disadvantaged youth. But the way that we see, or the way that we're in the community helping, is by just exposing to these youth as much as possible these different materials that can help guide them in their future.
Yeah, I appreciate that, David. And I think you raise an important point, which is like, we're raising so many threads in this conversation that really require a deeper dive into all of them. So, Sarah is sharing some links in the chat, which we encourage folks listening to read and research and learn. And we hope to continue this conversation certainly beyond this coffee hour. But Amanda, I want to come to you now and hear about how is the Living Arts and Science Center addressing these important issues?
Absolutely. So we believe that gender and racial equality in STEM is very important. And we see that historically everyone hasn't had access. And so this is definitely a topic that needs to be addressed. And we believe that STEM is for everyone. So it doesn't matter your background, where you're from, your gender, your ethnicity. We believe that STEM is for everyone. And so some of the things that we are doing to help with that is that we offer scholarships to students who are unable to afford our programming. So we do offer lots of free programs, but things like summer camps are paid for. And so we do offer scholarships to those students who are unable to pay for that. And we also have a series of careers in STEM videos. And it's really important, I think, for people to be able to see themselves in these positions. And so with those careers in STEM videos, we have been able to include women, people of color, people in underrepresented groups. So then our students are able to see themselves in these positions and know that that is a possible career for themselves. And we're also highlighting STEM careers that maybe lesser known careers or different career paths that people might not consider. We're also working with ASTC on a gender representation study. And we are also working on a summer STEM program for underrepresented girls and teaching them STEM this summer. So we take it very serious. We know that this is an issue, and we are working to help do what we can do to involve everyone in STEM, because we do believe that STEAM is for everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, and there's a lot of work to be done. So we appreciate all that all of you are doing to address these important issues and topics. So I've got one more question for Andrea, and then like a final question for everybody, and that'll wrap up our time together. And David, you already mentioned the Every Student Succeeds Act. So as we think about equity in education and this ongoing work, circling back to music education specifically and the power of arts integration, the Every Student Succeeds Act was passed in 2015 and is funded through the 2020-21 academic year. And it describes the need for a well-rounded education, which does include the arts. And research shows that arts educational experiences have significant impacts on students' academic, social, and emotional outcomes, with reduced disciplinary infractions, improved writing scores, and an increase in compassion for others. So Andrea, what role does music education play in this well-rounded education? And I know we've already kind of touched on music and STEM, but how does this integration support this role of music?
One of the things that we can do, perhaps, is to move students away from a single focus lesson and move in the direction of project-based learning. Rather than focusing on one single thing, the students can pull in whichever art or arts they would like to help support their point or to enhance the presentation of their project. And in that way, by teaching them how to do this and teaching them to share those presentations with one another, we can teach them to start thinking in an interdisciplinary way. For instance, we can have a student who is creating a piece maybe about architecture, and instead of just pulling some random music off the internet, find one of the thousands of apps that's out there and create your own music and think about, why is this piece of music? How am I using it to describe what the audience is seeing? And so they're able to start blending those things together. And the advances that music and video technology have made in the last several years have made this so much easier for students. Also, in terms of creating a well-rounded education, we also need to remember to create a well-rounded individual. And there is a social aspect to that, because when I taught band, I would have kids come and say, the only reason I came to school today was because I knew band was 6th period. And if I cut, I couldn't go. Because in music, there's a camaraderie, a community that develops that students really get hooked onto. And anyone that was a big fan of marching band can tell you that when they graduate, that was one of the big things that they missed, or playing in the concert band or playing in the jazz band, and that community that they built with them. Even if they are not in a performance group, though, going back to that music vocabulary we talked about, they can form groups and express opinions using that specific music vocabulary and being able to discuss what they enjoy about music, and perhaps getting into the STEM part of it with, I like this instrument playing the melody versus this instrument because I like its timbre better. Or I wish they had muted the trumpet during that section. I would have liked that better. And start playing music critic and expressing their opinions. So we need to really focus on making it interdisciplinary. If we want them to think that way, we have to make our assignments more interdisciplinary.
Thank you. Okay, so LexPhil is really excited to continue our educational work, and it has been really great to chat with all of you today about all the opportunities that exist for integrating the arts into these other fields like science, technology, engineering, and math. So we have a lot of links to share with you for additional resources if you want to learn more. There's some articles, some toolkits about STEAM, of course, the links to Kids Make It and the Living Arts and Science Center, and also some information about the racial and gender disparities that we discussed earlier. So we're making our way to the end of our conversation this morning, and I want to turn to a quote that is on the Kids Make It website, where you are describing your vision. And it is from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. And the quote is, "We believe that the best way to address poverty is to expand educational opportunities that enable all children to succeed in school, career, and life." So as we wrap up this morning, I'd love to hear from all of you and ask you all to respond to this quote and share any final thoughts that you have about the work of STEAM and why it's critical for future generations. And maybe we'll start with you, Jariah, and we'll kind of go Jariah, David, Lori, Amanda, Andrea.
So when we talk about our program, we say to people and our students probably almost every day, which probably bugs them. But we go back to this idea, which is true now, and which will be true into the future. And that is that the problems that we have created today will be the problems that our children will have to solve tomorrow. And so, whenever we challenge them to learn anything in this understanding of like interdisciplinary learning, we're preaching to them really that, these are things that the issues that we've created, like topsoil depletion, many things that we can name, right? These issues are going to be issues that have to be addressed in the future. And these aren't issues that, are about, these aren't like these aren't even societal issues. These are issues of humanity and for humanity. And so, when we think about our children, when we think about, the opportunities and the things that we want to teach them today, we have to keep in mind or be mindful of the fact that, there are things that we need to teach them today so that they will be prepared for whatever issues, whatever consequences, arise out of the things that we're creating today for our children. So, with our programming, we feel it's very essential to be intentional about what we're teaching them, to be intentional about, what we stress is important, and to expose them to as many, interdisciplinary experiences and opportunities as possible so that we can prepare them for the future that they are going to inherit, which, as it relates to science, technology, engineering, art, and math, kind of seems a little bleak. So, and to inspire them to be hopeful and to realize that, there is nothing that's impossible. So the issues that we're creating today are very much issues that they can solve using science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
I love that theme of hope. That's great. David, how about you?
Well, I mean, that quote for me, it really does strike home because I'm a proud product of PBS. So, I mean, ever since I can remember, like probably before kindergarten, I was watching, you know, the Nature channel. I was watching PBS Kids. I was watching these things that kind of expose the scientific world to me. So, growing up in Little Haiti, Miami, in, you know, the hood, having that be the beginning of my understanding about the world. When I stepped out of the house, it was into my backyard, and it wasn't just a backyard of trees, animals, and different things. It was more than that to me. There were questions. I needed to understand what all this meant, but I had that fundamental understanding of science because of PBS Kids and the public broadcasting stations and all the nature channels. I had an understanding that kind of guided my own experience. So in a way, it taught me how to explore the world in a scientific method or a scientific process. So from that, you know, I went on to college, you know, become an entrepreneur. So when we talk about educational opportunities, I think that our future completely depends on it. And the number one thing that we need to do in order to address these systemic issues in our society is make sure that every single child from the youngest age possible has access to STEAM education.
I love that. Lori, how about you?
Sorry, because I'm having trouble getting myself off mute. First of all, I love this quote. I'd never heard it before. And we just 100% believe in educational opportunities. And it's really at the heart of everything we do at the Living Arts and Science Center. But there's another quote that seems to be attributed to many people, and that is, if you can see it, you can be it. And how does a child know that they want to be an engineer or an astronaut or a symphony orchestra conductor if they've never had that exposure to the fields of physics or space or orchestral music? And I feel like we as organizations, as informal educators, as formal educators, we have not just an opportunity, but I feel we have an obligation to expose children to those concepts just beyond their internal surroundings. Because how else do they know what the possibilities are and how they can dream big? You know, I feel like you never know what little ripple is started through some inspiration. And you don't know what it is. Is it the color blue, or is it looking at a nebula, as Amanda had mentioned earlier? So let's just give those kids, you know, the opportunity to dream big.
That's great. Amanda?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of build on that, you know, we really believe that educational opportunities should be available to everyone. And something that Andrea was talking about before, I think several people have kind of touched on, is just that curiosity, which is so important. It's so important for music and all of STEAM, just to build that curiosity, because then they're driven. They want to learn more. But, you know, kind of back to what we're talking about, we have to show them what the possibilities are, and then build that curiosity and excitement into them, and then they're going to go for it.
That's great. And Andrea, you get the final word here.
Okay. Well, as someone that has worked with a significant number of children that lived in poverty families, I can tell you that one of the greatest challenges to this is because those families are working so hard to make ends meet, that doing things that they consider that's not putting food on the table or paying the light bill seem to be extraneous. And so one of the things that we have to do is find small ways to show them the benefit of their children participating in music. And so, you know, we would have music programs where the children had to write everything they performed. They had to compose it. And then the parents would come and watch them do this, and I would turn around and say, all I did was lead tonight. They did all of it. I was just the leader. They performed all of it. Your child can do this. And sometimes then you would see parents that would, come up to me the next time. Yeah, we've been looking at this person on the website. We've been trying to find these apps. So for those families, helping them see, just taking a minute or two every day to find a way to help their child connect and make their world a little bit bigger the benefits are going to be tremendous in the future.
Well, this conversation has been amazing. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here this morning, and thank you for letting us just go a few minutes over. But I hear these amazing themes of curiosity and hope and, making the world bigger, dream big. It's just really inspiring. And we're so appreciative of all the work that you're doing in the community. And at LexPhil, we're so excited to continue our work in education and our commitment to STEAM and unveil some programs as well. I'm going to give it back to Sarah to bring us home, but thank you all for being here today.
I'm going to surround another heartfelt thank you to all of you. Thank you, Jariah, David, Andrea, Lori, Amanda, for this incredible conversation and for each of the work that you all are doing in our community. We so appreciate it, and we look forward to hopefully collaborating more in the future. Also, I want to thank our LexPhil Percussionists, Jim, Brady, Brian, and Josh for that wonderful performance of Life on Mars. You all can listen to that performance again and again. It's on our website and YouTube page. Thanks to everyone who joined us on Facebook and Zoom for tuning in this morning. We will be returning next Friday at 10 a.m. for a conversation with Kelly and members from our LexPhil Wind section. We also want to take a moment to thank all of our amazing supporters and members of LexPhil who make our work possible. If you are in a position to support us, please consider becoming a member today for as little as $5 a month on our website. And lastly, I'm sharing a link to a brief survey in the chat for our community. It takes just 2 minutes to complete, and we value your feedback and absolutely take it into account as we develop more upcoming programs. So we'd love to hear from all of you. Thank you all again, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see folks back here next Friday. Thank you.